Good evening and welcome to the post-budget discussion. The budget presented by Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, the Finance Minister in the House of Assembly this morning. I am Kamala John Baptist Aaron. Happy to have you on what is quickly becoming a tradition here in Dominica, the post-budget discussion. Let me welcome you to the program. We are here at the Government Information Studios in Bath Estate, and we also want to welcome the radio stations carrying this live as well. DBS Radio and Kyrie FM. I am Kamala John Baptist Aaron. I'll introduce you to the people who will be detailing their thoughts on the budget presentation this morning, the budget 2014-2015. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back, and again, thank you for joining us this evening. We are live at the studios of the Government Information Service. We're also being simultaneously broadcast on DBS Radio and Kyrie FM. I want to introduce you to the people who will be talking about the budget presented by the Finance Minister, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, in the Parliament this morning. Let's get this started. Right next to me is the Principal Advisor to the Prime Minister, Eddie Lambert, and we also have McCarthy Marie. He's an economist, and next to him is the National Coordinator for ALBA and the Dominica's Ambassador to Venezuela, Dr. Philbert Aaron, stationed in the office of the Prime Minister. Gentlemen, good evening.
Pleasant good evening to you, Kamala, and all the listeners of to this program, the viewers and listeners via radio. Pleasant good evening to you all.
Same here for me. Glad to be back on the panel. Talk about the budget. Good evening. Good evening, everybody.
I'm happy to be the only woman in the midst, always. Let's get straight to it. The budget presentation, the national budget presentation, in other words, the real deal, presented in the Parliament this morning, 2014-2015, by the Finance Minister. Let me start with the Principal Advisor to the Prime Minister. Your thoughts on the details of the budget this morning?
Well, first of all, I should say, Kamala, that I think the Prime Minister did a very good job of presenting the budget. He was composed, his diction was clear, and from the body language of the members of Parliament and the viewers, I think the message was being absorbed, and it went down well. The budget was cloaked under the theme towards expansion of the economy. And this particular theme really emanates from the last 4 budget addresses and the fiscal measures that have been implemented to date. It really now, as it were, proposes for us to step out boldly in expanding the economy, because the prior years, if you look at the themes of prior budget statements, they spoke to consolidation, they spoke to reform, they spoke to addressing what in the growth and social protection strategy has been identified as the binding constraint to growth, which is addressing infrastructure issues, both human and physical, and in particular, the road infrastructure, matters of accessing Dominica and the like, as well as continuing to ensure that there was a strong social protection program. Because given the structure of the economy of Dominica, we are coming out of a structure where one crop in one sector was the dominant earner of foreign exchange. And in order to mitigate the effects of the progressive decline in that industry, there was a slack that had to be picked up to ensure that persons did not slip into poverty. And hence this government, over the last 4 or 5 years in particular, has implemented a strong social safety net program to ensure that persons were able to withstand the shocks of being displaced from the industry that was once their bread and butter.
We'll go in order, so let me ask McCarthy Marie the very same question. Your thoughts?
Well, I would think this was a budget that was geared with elections in mind. I think it actually made reference to the fact that this will be the last budget before the election takes place, because election is constitutionally due by March, and the election budgets are usually 1 year, you know, by years.
Let me understand this. You're saying that you thought this was a budget with general elections in mind,
yes.
even if inside of it the finance minister said, this is not what this is.
Yes.
Okay,
right, is what
got
I'm
it.
saying. Because in an election year, that's the time any government who is in power, doesn't matter which side he or she is on, attempts to give as many goodies as he can to the electorate. Yeah, and if you read the budget, for one thing, there are no new taxes imposed on anybody. And every sector, if you like, has been given some relief somewhere along the line. Like, for example, the smaller taxpayers, the minimum revenue they need to have to pay taxes has been raised from $20,000 to $25,000. So that means you get $5,000 more on which you don't have to pay taxes. The hoteliers have been given some relief, very little relief really, but some relief in the case that their service charge will no longer be subject to VAT, which means they'll have that little bit more money involved. Except that there's a little, I think, error that might have been made there, in that they should have put a maximum as to what the service charge is, so that the hotelier doesn't give, say, 50% of his revenue is service charge, and therefore not subject to VAT. But anyway, he gets some relief on that. The elderly are getting some further relief. The people who don't have a pension are going to get some, as of right, some money from the government. So there is an attempt to give as many people as possible something. Of course, some of it isn't very large. That's obviously because of the constraint in which the government is operating. If you understand what I mean. The government doesn't have lots of money to be given lots of largesse to lots of people. So, sure. But it attempts to give everybody something for, to keep them happy.
Dr. Aaron.
Well, I take the Prime Minister, exactly on his word. And he stated very clearly that this is not an elections budget. And then you look at it, and you are inclined to think that it is not. He speaks and he acts consistently. For example, the Prime Minister, as the holder of the biggest majority ever in Parliament in the history of Dominica, has learned that it is doing the right things that gets you votes. And so he's always clear about that, whether it's in foreign policy or whether it's as Minister for Finance, which he also is. What I see as very important here, very interesting, because it is a slight pivot to the private sector. Just like Eddie Lambert said, we are in transition. We are moving from a situation of an economy that was largely dependent on bananas, and we are moving to a new type of economy, especially service-driven. And we are now able, after having set the framework for a number of changes in our economy, for a pivot to the private sector, something that the private sector has been asking for a greater role, a more dynamic role, along with the public sector. And so I see that as a pivot, and I see that as one of the more important things in this new budget. That is, here, a new engagement, with a new spirit with the private sector in order to go after growth and balance the two major pillars of the policy of government, growth and social protection.
Let me ask Mark this question. Based on what you said, that this is a budget that you think is geared at general elections, is there anything in there that you think is a step away from what the government has done in the past that's, kind of unlike its nature?
There isn't anything that it might say radically different from what it usually does. In other words, as Eddie rightly says, that the government has been paying lots of attention to the social safety net. In other words, make sure that people do not fall below a certain level of consumption, which they've been doing. But they've been doing it, and this time, of course, they've, in a sense, expanded the range of people who they've included in it, including as you would say, not persons who are in need of consumption as such, but people in the private sector who think that lessening of taxes and administrative burdens would boost their businesses. So he's widened the group, the net of the group of persons whom the government is assisting, if we want to put it that
So
way.
would you say that there would be a greater pool of people who should be or could be happy or relieved based on what they heard this morning?
Yes, for sure.
Let me ask Eddie Lambert, towards expansion of the economy, that was the theme of the budget this morning. You're expanding towards what in the economy?
You're expanding towards a more diversified economy. An economy where government, through its various policy statements in this budget and others made in the past, where government wants to position itself to really take a more minimal role in being the driver of economic growth in the country. In the section that deals with strengthening the relations with the private sector, the Prime Minister in his budget statement says that he wants to so engage the private sector that government spends its time focusing on improving the environment for enterprises to thrive, so that those enterprises become the prime driver of economic expansion and economic growth. So really, it's a shift away from government being the prime investor in infrastructure, even in hotel plants, in education, in housing. All these are things that drive economic growth. And where, through the package of investments, the package of measures rather, in the budget, including the fiscal measures, I think the Prime Minister, as Minister of Finance, is sufficiently confident that the economy will be so improved that he can even expand now the base for social protection by including persons of pensionable age who do not yet receive a pension. Because if you notice, the fiscal measures, the tax measures, they really are going to result in an overall loss in revenue. Yet in spite of this loss of revenue, the social protection, especially with respect to our elderly, is being expanded. That speaks to confidence.
Is that wise, though?
That speaks that speaks to confidence in the policy measures being proposed, including the economic citizenship program and the citizenship by investment programs, which are expected to bring in the revenue, right, to support the expanded social protection.
What stands out to you most? Is it what you just said, the social protection portion of it, or is it something else that stands out to you most? If you had to pick something out immediately, it would be?
If I had to pick something out immediately, and I hope I'm not being too biased in the exercise, is the thrust to make Dominica a more competitive place to do business and to ease and improve the quality of life of our citizens by reducing the cost of energy through investments in geothermal. That stands out to me as, the most transformative feature in the overall budget presentation.
Let me ask McCarthy Murray, what jumps out at you, the budget?
Well, what jumps out at me there are these. One thing I would say, what jumps out at me in a sense is that there are no really large projects that are budgeted for in this budget, unlike previous budgets.
So that's interesting. What jumps out as you is what is not in it.
Well, yeah, in that sense, in the sense that there isn't a large capital infrastructure project in the budget.
I got it.
You understand what I mean?
Sure.
Like, for example, in previous years, we've had the construction of the West Coast Road, which is a major activity. We've had the reconstruction of the Melville Airport, which was, quite a major activity. Even the road to the airport now, which is basically finished. But there isn't a similar thing there, except that there is, in fact, some money allocated for the East Coast rehabilitation road there. That's one of the things that's definitely in there. But it more generally, what strikes me is that the budget seeks deliberately to spread benefits, fiscal benefits, if you like, to as large a range of persons in the community as possible. I mean, some of them are not very large, but in a situation of a tight fiscal situation, we couldn't expect very much more than that. You know, but it's an attempt to make sure that as large a group of persons who are potential voters, of course, get some benefits and for that. And I don't think, in terms of saying it's an election budget, there's nothing wrong, immoral, or anything about being in politics, being in the government at election time, presenting a budget that has the intention of getting the voters to like you a little more and vote for you. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Except that in the Minister for Finance's view, there is. And, but let me go to something else. I do not think that the Minister for Finance, Roosevelt Skerrit, and the Dominican Labour Party government gets enough credit for two things. One, the amount of responsibility with which they have managed the finances of the country. That's one. And I'll explain if you allow. And the second one, the extent to which human development is a major part of development theory now, which it wasn't a few years ago. Okay, so in the first instance, we were used to liberal governments that wanted to do many things for many people, especially for poor people, did not pay attention to whether the books were balanced. So at the time, to be a liberal government, as it was in the past, was to be irresponsible, all right? Was to be, you know, just let anything happen. This government has taught us in Dominica and in the Eastern Caribbean to do two contrary things. To be very kind and supportive to people who need support, and at the same time, to be tight with managing money and watching that, you know, to ensure that the books are balanced. That is an achievement that we shouldn't underestimate, because it is the basis of the development that we want to get to. As a matter of fact, it is the basis for political success. The previous UWP government failed at that, and as a result lost two things. They lost the economy and they lost voters. The second thing is, in new thinking, especially about in small states like ours, you know, development of human capacity is very important. We are not very rich in raw materials. We're not a large economy. A few years ago, the extent to which we now emphasize, people now emphasize education, making everybody participate in the economy, you know, it wasn't as important. And that is where bringing in those people who do not have an income and giving them some income is important. It is not just a political and strictly social thing. It actually gives them some operation in the economy. The way in which they join the economy, one part of it, is by spending. And they didn't have spending money, and now the government is actually making it available. So where does that money go?
That's what I want to find out.
That
Because
money-
what I want to find out from you is, I heard that, I'm sure many people will be happy what the Prime Minister called a top-up in some instances, and but the time that they're getting it, does it make sense for the economy because of the age that they are?
It makes sense in two ways. One, people on low income spend a large portion of their income on basic needs. In other words, that money is not going to remain dormant. People with a lot of money spend a small portion of their money on needs. And as we know, there is a lot of liquidity in banks and a lot of people with, you know, a lot of capital that they do not work. In Dominica, that has been a situation, and that is the situation.
Sure.
So what is happening there is a form, an indirect stimulus, because this money is not going to stay with these poor people who do not have income. It's going to go to food. It's going to end up circulating in the economy. And that is good economics. It may be good politics, but primarily for the Minister for Finance, it is good economics. Now, the other part is, you know, the education and other things. The new thrust in development, especially for small countries, is to emphasize human development. The United Nations, especially, for example, with their new measures of that development index, for example, focuses on that. And that's where we are. So bringing in all those people who were not in the economy, making them participate, educating the younger ones, but making the more elderly participate in the economy in some means, is a strategy for economic development that is becoming more and more popular and more important, especially for developing small states like ours.
But as you mentioned, education there, in the budget here, he says that he's removing certain taxes on computers.
Yes.
Yes. I thought it would have been a good idea to continue, but you also mentioned ICT as a tool for development and so on, to have scrapped the computer lab which they have at the college in 2014, and to make sure every student has his personal laptop to go to school with. Because now in 2014, if you're going to be a student and you're going to be participating in the modern economy, that is a tool.
No, let me understand. I'm trying to understand what you're
Absolutely.
saying. You're asking for what? You think it would be better if there were all the students at the state college would have a laptop
Sure.
per student.
Yes.
And scrap the lab by which
lab.
they have
And then
collective access.
Right. Yeah, and they put a couple of computers in the library, which they could use when they forget their computer or
And
whatever.
you're saying the purpose of that is what?
To make the students step in the 21st century.
The scrapping part I don't understand.
Well, I say, well, we spent a certain sum of money to put these, what I would say, really obsolete systems in a modern.
Is it really obsolete?
Well, yes, it is obsolete. In 2014, every student.
No, obsolete would be
every
does not
single
exist.
student-
It exists in every university
Yeah.
practically around the world,
In
that
every
there
uni-
is
in
a computer lab
every
that
university,
exists.
Every
It's not
university,
obsolete.
every student is expected to show up with his computer.
Here is what I know. I was a professor at a university, Coppin State University, which had one of the highest ranking for technology. Okay, they got awards for that. But they still had collective spaces where students and others can have access to computers because a number of things happen. For example, I know students who live in places where they, even if they did have a computer, okay, even if they did have a computer, they may need to work with others, okay? That allows for this. Also, even when you do own a computer, there are times, especially on a campus, that you will not have access to your own machine. So it doesn't matter how much access individuals have, you still will have collective spaces. You will still need collective spaces for that.
But the point I want to make there is the mental shift away from students not having a computer to one where it's a requirement. That's why this is why you would put a couple computers in the library, where students doesn't have his computer, it's in the repair shop or whatever, he can go out on there. And in terms of me not having a computer and we need to work together, that's what the internet is there for. I did a study with a guy in Trinidad for almost 2 years, and we never met in person. And we collaborated all the time online, which is where the whole thing is going. So we have to keep up with the times, otherwise the human resource that we are trying to develop there is going to be slipping backwards rather than keeping up with the best. We have to keep up with the best.
But the act, do you give any credit to the
Why is it such heavy focus on the college, though?
No,
the measure.
I'm saying the college is because the college is a newly built institution which
Yeah.
we could have started off right, especially with the new building, and then which goes towards the whole question of developing strong ITC infrastructure in Dominica to drive productivity, growth, and everything. Which is why, for example, in the budget, there is the question of reducing the duties on computers. It's to allow more people to have the machine so that they can participate.
Yes, but
in
it's
it.
not only people who go to the college, the business house.
No, no.
That measure is intended to
it's for
benefit
everybody. It's for
small businesses.
It's for everybody who needs to
Yes.
buy a computer. But I was
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
there, in particular, for the transfer, for the students to get knowledge and participate in the modern economy in a modern way. That is a tool that they need, and I would hope at the next budget, special in the education part of the budget, that some funds are made available so that students can have access to their own computers, whether at the college or.
But Mark, I see students with smartphones these days.
Yeah, sure,
that are virtually
Yes,
function like
exactly,
computers,
exactly.
and they
Precisely.
participate in
Precisely.
the global economy,
Precisely.
social
Precisely.
networking and
Precisely.
so on via those
Precisely.
smartphones
But,
with
but-
applications that really
Yeah.
are almost equivalent to
Right,
that of a computer. So, so the technology is there.
So the technology is there, but the whole,
and they are accessing it.
But it's the whole question of encouraging it.
Okay,
Encouraging
I
it,
take the
because
point.
this is where the tax measures come to that. You encourage it so that we go towards the,
Okay.
school and education and building up the human capacity
We,
for the modern world.
we get that point. I think it is important also to recognize the expansion of the base of access to ICT as well as personal computers. That was mentioned in the budget as well. It was increased significantly on both fronts. Let me ask you about the taxation, or rather the change, the shifts that are going to be made to the tax regime, even if it's not drastic. But you make what of it, Mark?
Well, for one thing, as the budget rightly says there, we've been having not rapid inflation, but there's been a bit of inflation since the 20,000 threshold has been set. And now, I'm not sure I made the calculation, but the $25,000 threshold now is probably equal to what the 20,000 threshold was when it was set, about 4 or 5 years back.
Yeah,
So,
I think
so,
a little
so,
more
so,
than
the,
that,
so the
but-
people, as you were saying, that the people who pay taxes needed a top up as well. And as we know, a large number of the persons who actually pay income tax are employed by the government. So it's one way of the government compensating them instead of giving them the official increase in nominal salary, give them a tax break. So this is also they get to pay less tax, especially those at the lower level of income. Yeah.
Let me ask the principal advisor to the Prime Minister. The thinking behind this was what? The tax. I'm still on that.
What I see, I see the entire gamut of taxes, not just any one of them, but all the relief, including the relief on increasing the mortgage, right? That one, the rebate on the mortgage from
Sure.
$15,000 to $25,000. I see all of those collectively as contributing, one, to making sure persons have more money in their pockets, increasing disposable income, and at the same time, contributing to improving on the cost of living, dealing with the whole cost of living issues that households and families and individuals have to contend with virtually every day. I am especially heartened by the intervention with respect to wipes for both babies and the elderly, because these are little things that you hear people complaining about regularly. Persons caring for elderly parents, for example, they complain about how expensive those wipes for the elderly are, as well as women with children,
Sure.
young children.
Sure.
You hear them complaining about the high cost of Pampers and so on, right? And so I think these measures really are intended to bring relief to persons who need it most at this point. As indicated by the Prime Minister, he would like to see, in terms of the tax reform, he would like to see us move to the situation where everybody pays one flat tax rate. And as it indicated that the CARTAC, has been engaged to carry out studies to inform government on this process. I think, so in all, if you look at the budget addresses and the measures over the last 8 years, you see this element of compassion running through every single one of them. Consideration for those in need, right? When you think of the children from disadvantaged parents who are faced with the problem of meeting transportation costs to send their children to school on a daily basis, government came forward, right, and assisted those parents, right, by providing paying buses. I think in the budget address it was mentioned that in excess of $7 million were
correct.
paid to private buses,
bus drivers,
yeah, to take children to school. So the element of compassion continues to be there while we look at the broader measures of economic growth in the key sectors in the economy, namely agriculture and tourism principally at this point in time.
Yes, at the same time as there are those social protection measures for which the government is becoming very well known, the pivot towards the private sector is very important, and I do not want it to get lost. That is, when you put the various forms of relief, especially tax relief, together, all right, so there's a reduction in corporate income tax, there's a rebate on corporate taxes for hiring new employees, as well as the service charge on VAT, okay? You put them together. You put them also along the investments that the government is making in energy, as Eddie said. But an initiative there, which is important, that is government reaching out to a private sector that is more and more organized and is more and more willing to participate hand in hand with the government in a more constructive way to build, to grow the economy. That thrust, I think, is what is going to really take us forward. Why? Because the social protection job that the government has been doing has been excellent, and there will come a time where those people, all those people who need protection, will be protected. And the emphasis, as the economy becomes much more stable, as the finances of the country get better, we will have to, and the Prime Minister knows that, the Minister for Finance knows that, and you see that emphasis on expansion, and at the same time, outreach to the private sector, so that together, the public sector and the private sector can emphasize not just social protection, but growth of the economy, which is the surest way of lifting people out of poverty through jobs and, forming businesses and so forth.
Speaking of jobs, the day before the budget presentation, the finance minister indicated that the thing that preoccupies his mind the most is job creation. Listening to the budget, did you get that sense?
I did, absolutely. And especially because here, the Prime Minister is emphasizing in various ways. For example, the kind of relief to the various businesses. One of the intentions there is for them to pick up new hires. For example, the rebate on hiring, okay, is exactly that, is a direct stimulus there, to push people to hire more. So that's important. And that's how you produce. More and more producers, more and more workers working more effectively. Productivity is mentioned here. Those are themes that are important, especially in expanding the economy, which is what the government is now able to give more and more attention to, because the crisis years are further and further back, and the government is doing much better than had been done in the past. So an emphasis on growth and a true partnership, a different kind of partnership with the private sector in order to go after that growth with proper public sector participation.
Let's just build on that, because growth in any economy is the result of investment, whether it's by foreign direct investment, the private sector, or the government. And Dominica has had for over 40 years a regime of fiscal incentives, the purpose of which was to attract investment, foreign direct investment and local investment. And really, I recall in 2008 at the opening of of Reunion down at the Bayfront, The Prime Minister is in address made the observation that after all these years of fiscal incentives, there was only one significant foreign investment Dominica had managed to attract. He was referring to Ross University, of course. You know? And today, we saw that the initiative coming out of the budget to undertake a review of our fiscal incentives regime, because it has not resulted really in the kind of investments we would have liked to see, which results in the creation of jobs. Because really, 45 years ago, when those fiscal incentive regimes were put in place, the world of business was different. The regional arrangements were different. In those days, there was an allocation of industries regime, which didn't result in anything much. Then there was under the Article 56 of the... well, we're going to come to that. We're going to come to that. Well, this is where I was coming to, is the protection now. On Article 56, the protection, that's where DCP benefited a lot. But really, business models have evolved since then. You know, new forms of business enterprises, new forms of investments have surfaced. In the hotel sector, for example, the whole areas of time sharing, fractional sharing, you know, villa development and so on. There is no regime of incentives that adequately addresses those, you know, types of investments today. Then at the regional and sub-regional levels, right? If we are to capitalize on opportunities afforded under both the economic union on the one hand and the economic partnership agreement with the European Union on the other, right? We really have to look at incentives that can compete with other jurisdictions. And here you see again the intention, as it will, after having listened to the private sector and other interests government has engaged over the years, really, and up to the preparation of this budget. The Minister of Finance made the decision, look, this is time to review the fiscal incentives regime to make it more competitive so that more investments can come and thereby grow the economy and create greater jobs.
Mm-hmm. I want to find out from you. You think what of when you have a live show? If you were the opposition, you would think what of the budget? What I'm curious about is, would you think to yourself, this looks like so many people getting, as Mark said, spreading of a lot of the incentives, a lot of relief, so to speak. Do you think you would feel a little bit disadvantaged?
If I were a smart opposition, I would do something that I always say should be done. Say that this is great stuff. One of the reasons is that a lot of people and sectors, both sectors, there's activity in there and there are good things for them. But I would say that's great. And the only thing you can promise once you say it is good is more. Mm-hmm. Okay? And that has been one of the problems. That has been one of the problems of the opposition. Okay? But I see that, you know, that would be a way of gaining credibility. Because what you have here, let us be very clear about it. The government over the past few years, okay, has done something. First of all, it's like what Obama did. First, stabilize the economy, okay, because you have a situation that you had lost jobs. From 1995 to 2000, the situation that was created. First, you had to stabilize the economy, all right? That was done. But not just stabilize finances, but also give the economy a new foundation. Bananas left, like Eddie said, you know, as a major part of the economy. And we were going into tourism, which is a totally new orientation. The orientation of a farmer, okay, in the heights of Dominica, planting bananas or any other farm product. Mm-hmm. And the orientation of a tour guide of a hotelier, of a serving person in a hotel. Two different orientations. And we had a long tradition of agriculture with that orientation, long education in that orientation, and not so long in services. So you had to move to that. The government is moving into that, and it makes it difficult for a reasonable opposition to find anything substantial to talk about. So a reliable and smart opposition would say good and promise the only better thing, which is more of it.
As a matter of
Let's hold the thought. We'll come right back in just a moment. Let's take a break. We're live at the Government Information Service studios in Bath Estate. We're coming back in just a while. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is the post-budget discussion here at the Government Information Service studios in Bath Estate, being carried live also by Kyrie FM and DBS Radio. Through the magic of television, we have a new guest on the panel. Let me say good evening to the president of the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce, the DIC, Robert Tongue. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here.
Let me get straight to asking some of the questions that I asked before. Your thoughts initially on the budget presentation this morning?
Well, basically, time. We've had not too much time to actually discuss the matter. But based on what we've seen so far, I'd really like to congratulate the government for putting together a budget that is more in sync with what we as the private sector required. Obviously, not everything that we asked for is has been approved, but as you know, not everything you ask for is going to be given. But I think we have to go in stages. In the past, there's always been that a distrust between the private sector and the government, where the private sector seem to want what they want only, and we see the government as only wanting what they want. But our thinking is that the more disposable income that individuals have is going to be a win-win situation for both sides. More companies will have, more individuals will have funds to pay their bills and to buy stuff. And at the same time, too, companies will have to, will make more money, they will pay more VAT, and they will also pay more income tax.
Mm-hmm. So
Funny? Well, if they make a lot more, then even if it is a reduced, hopefully they should. You want to see all companies making a lot more than we're actually making right now.
let me get this from you. So the bottom line for you are happy in general based on what you heard as a block.
We are happy. We could be happier, but hopefully next year the items that were not approved will be added to the budget.
Like what? What is it that, let's say, you thought, I really would have liked to see this, but I didn't, or at least you got some of what you wanted?
Basically, we asked about nine items. The first one was access to capital. That was not mentioned, but I don't
think... The DIC alone asked for 9 things.
The DIC along with other organizations. So it wasn't just the DIC's items that are there. We had meetings for DBF, the Dominica Business Forum, where all of the organizations, about 7 of us, came together and said, hey, these are the key things that we'd really like. So access to capital. I think there is money out there through the, what do you call it? Petro-Caribbean. It has not been dispersed, but I think once that is put in place, it could definitely help. I guess that's not really a budget thing per se. Personal income tax, we asked for reductions in all the 4 bands. We got a reduction in the first band, and I mean, all monies that persons, I bet already people are actually calculating how much money they're going to not have to pay and see what they're going to do with those monies. I'd also advise persons not to spend everything that they have. Spend a certain amount of it, but also save some of it. There's always going to be rainy days. So the personal income tax, we got some of that. The mortgage interest, we also got that in terms of moving the threshold from $15,000 to $25,000. In terms of shipping costs, custom duties, I think there's going to be a review.
Sure.
And we're hoping that there'll be additional dialogue with the private sector to get some of these reduced. The wipes, the Pampers, the diapers. I am a dad, so I can tell you firsthand how many Pampers and wipes I buy on a regular basis, and it's not cheap. So I think it'll go a long way to help persons to have more monies in their pockets. In terms of the small businesses, to try to stimulate them, I think there's something in terms of the rebate on when you employ new persons.
I'm very interested in what you think about that.
It's 2%. I think it should be a lot more, on the basis that right now government is actually giving 100%. So to move from 100% to only 2%, I think they can do a lot better. And the whole intention is to encourage, especially new companies, and because it's not just for, if you're replacing a staff member, you're not going to get that rebate. So it's going to be for creating new jobs. So if you're going to create new jobs, you need to have that stimulus for someone to say, you know something, it's almost like a great deal out there. So as a result of that, let me hire some more people. Let me create this new business. So I think it can be more. It said it's going to be reviewed. So I'm hoping that once it is reviewed, and even before it's reviewed, some changes can be made. Duties on computers have gone down to zero, which is good for citizens. But I think also, as you've been discussing a while ago, a computer, a tablet, a phone, they're basically the same thing right now. So obviously, I think it should even be expanded to include phones, because on your phone you can practically do everything that you can do on a computer. And the duty on phones, I think, is at about 40-something%. And if you do a study, you'd realize that most people actually buy their phones out of Dominica. So there's a lot of revenue that we're still missing. So if you can have the phone being purchased locally, you can have warranties on your phones, and it'll increase the transactions in Dominica. I think that's basically it.
Okay. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I mean, this is an illustration of influence. What Mr. Tong has just done is just revealed how his organization has influenced the Minister for Finance.
Sure.
And I think that is a very good illustration of a point that the Minister for Finance makes, that this government consults very broadly and this government listens. Another area, for example, is in foreign direct investment. There is the program, the Citizenship by Investment program, which is explicitly directed at increasing the amount of money we attract, investment that we attract. And because the government has acknowledged in the growth and in the report, in the annual social and economic report, that we could be doing better. So here is a government that listens not just on social programs, not just to voters per se, but to the private sector and very broadly. But the important thing, though, is in order to move people, not just in the level of development, but also to grow the economy. The government is very, very, very interested in growing the economy. And that is being signaled not only by listening to the private sector, consulting with the private sector, but responding in tangible ways to what the private sector would want.
You want to say something, Eddie?
Yeah, I don't want agriculture to slip through the cracks tonight. Right?
Okay.
Good.
Private sector thing.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I mentioned earlier on that we were creating a more diversified platform for economic expansion. And let us zero in for a moment on the agricultural sector. That diversification is taking place within the agricultural sector as well. Moving away from banana being the dominant crop to a greater mix, and integrating into that mix the processing with respect to coffee and most likely later on cocoa. However, that thrust to diversifying within agriculture has had its own challenges. Remember, throughout the address, the word challenge kept coming up. As you made one step to improve things in even the banana industry, black cigaretteca came along.
Sure.
Good. Then in the citrus sector, which has been traditionally a strong sector in the economy, you had citrus greening disease. So government has had to be responded to diseases of a magnitude unseen before within the sector. And the response for bananas has been to date, right, to source banana plants that are disease resistant, black cigaretteca resistant, right? And the citrus greening program continues. You'll notice, and these little things happen, but people miss it. You notice, Kamala, that you get yams throughout the year now? All of that is because of the research that has been going on, right, under the general umbrella of food security and increasing export of agricultural commodities. Right? When you read the old agricultural literature on Dominica, you hear the point being made time and time again that the terrain of Dominica makes Dominica best suitable, right, for 3 crops. Right? Hence, we've had cocoa, we've had coffee in the past as well, and we see now an attempt to reintroduce the 3 crops, which, given the effects of climate change, perhaps with more frequent storms and heavy rainfall and unpredictable drought, are perhaps more suitable crops to cope with the climate change issues surrounding the agricultural sector, both in terms of disease and in terms of the fragility of some of the crops. Right? And we are linking this now to processing. We have the coffee plant, good, through the packing houses, which is part of the infrastructure for the modern processing and export of agricultural commodities. There are plans as well to do what is called pre-processing of some commodities, like root crops and vegetables, right? Blanching them, freezing them, putting them in plastic bags, and sending them through the supermarkets. All those are on the agenda as a first step. So
A first step to what?
A first step towards increasing, because your capacity to do what is called secondary processing is strongly dependent on large volumes of material, and so which we do not at this point have.
We're going to take some phone calls in just a while. An hour and a half passes by really, really quickly. We want to include your phone calls in just a moment, but let me ask you this. Let me see if I can get a quick answer. Based on what you're saying about what is going on in agriculture, what is the message? The message is that what? The government is moving to how can I say, prop agriculture, or are we moving away from it more into the service industry? What is going on?
We're diversifying within agriculture by expanding the base of agricultural commodities that are grown on a commercial level for both local consumption and distribution and export. And a reorganized agricultural investment unit, as was mentioned in the budget address, will provide financing for those commercial farmers.
Let me give you the number to call. You can feel free to call in. We're going until 8 this evening. The number to call, 440-7657. That number will get you on the air. You can make your comment, ask your question, and please, let me ask you to keep it brief. Get the question in, get the comment in as briefly as possible, and so we can move forward. Let me ask Robert this question. The DHT, the DAIC represents a cross section of businesses. Based on what is contained in the budget, do you get the sense that one segment of businesses got more than the other, or do you think it is pretty much evenly spread as far as relief benefits are concerned?
Unfortunately, I really can't comment on that based on the time. Once we've received a copy of the budget address, we wanted to give it priority, because all that is part of the advocacy. In the past, I guess you would look at it and not say anything. The intention is to look at it, go through it, and then come back to the government and say, hey, this is what we see, this is where we see the positives.
When did the DIC not say anything in the budget?
No. When I say in the past, the budget was not taken and reviewed and made a response to the government. So in the past, that was not done. So the way forward right now is really to be the true voice of our membership.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't get that sense. I've been in the media a very long time. I've interviewed many people presidents of DIC post-budget talking about the contents of it. So I didn't get that sense. But okay. Maybe where you sit, there is someone telling you that.
Well, the bottom line is that our whole intention is to really be the true voice of our membership.
Sure.
And to begin to actually even bring in more persons. And as you can see, the advocacy is beginning to work. So as opposed to fighting all the time, in a sense, we've come to a stage where we can actually begin to sit down and speak. Obviously, everything that you ask for will not be given, but at least you can get one or two. It begins to make that big difference. The vision right now is really for, as opposed to having the DIC, the DHT, the Employers Federation, the Manufacturers Association, the Builders Association. As you can see, there's so many, and if government wants to speak, you basically have to speak to 7 different people.
Sure.
I'm hoping that the vision is that you'd have one organization, one strong organization, so that when you speak, government is basically forced to listen as opposed to going to all the different people. And so that way members can get a much better value for their money. So take, for example, agriculture. You're hearing some, you're not hearing all of it in a sense. And I mean, there's so many other opportunities. Poultry right now is something I see that is taking off. It's not something that I'm truly I wouldn't do myself, but I can see myself actually investing into poultry. Government, not government, but companies have been importing so much chicken in the past. Even we used to be importers of chicken, and
Sure.
we imported a 40-foot container of chicken every month. So you can only imagine if you have 5 companies, how much chicken is being imported. So you have locals doing it, and they're doing pretty well. There's the eggs, there's the meat coming out of it. But I think because they don't have that voice, they can't come to government and say, hey, we would like to do this. But from speaking to some of them, I think one of the priority areas is the duty on the feed. So if we can begin to reduce that, they can begin to make the price of the local chicken a lot more affordable. And at the same time, you're going to be getting product that has less steroids and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be, again, a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, I am very, very happy with that kind of orientation and the signals. It seems that the signals that the government is sending to the private sector are being picked up and responded to positively, because that is the direction that the government is going. Having stabilized the economy, like I've said before, stabilized finances, looking to expand the economy as the theme is. And the Prime Minister has assigned his cabinet secretary, who is a man with experience in trade. He was the PS of Trade and Foreign Affairs. I had worked in customs, has tremendous experience in those areas, and to contact, to be in touch with the private sector organizations in order to start a real meaningful dialogue that leads to a closer and closer collaboration between private sector and public sector. So the government, which is strong in public sector investment, okay, is signaling more and more clearly and more strongly that it understands very well that to build the economy that we want, that would provide jobs and benefits, higher standard of living to everybody, requires a very close participation with the private sector. And that's a very good sign for all of us in Dominica.
Is that participation there, Robert?
It has begun. In the past, you would not necessarily meet if anyone, or you meet and then there would be nothing coming out of it. So through what we did, in terms of moving forward to creating that one organization, that's where the DBF, the Dominica Business Forum, came about. So you have all of these organizations, so all the presidents are on that organization, and that organization, the mandate right now is to meet with the cabinet secretary, if I remember correctly, and the PSs on a regular basis to say, hey, these are all of our concerns. We're going to come and we talk to you firsthand. Likewise, you're also going to have some concerns. You can talk to us, and we can see how we can thrash it out even before it goes up to cabinet or go to the regulatory agencies who have to deal with maybe certain administrative issues. So that has started. It'll continue. But again, the way forward is that the private sector will get stronger. And as they get stronger, obviously, they'll have a much louder voice. It's not every time that both sides will agree, but we're hoping that once we're strong, we can actually push our agenda to a certain extent.
That's the second time I'm hearing the word push.
You have to push.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Push and pull. There always has to be balance at some point.
440-7657, that is the number to call. We'll get you live on the air to ask a question or make a comment to the members of the panel on this post-budget discussion this evening. 440-7657. I want to find out from you, Mr. Aaron, the national coordinator to ALBA. When sometimes it's mentioned and sometimes it's not. I like to bring this in every year. The presentation itself, aesthetically, audio-wise, do you think that people felt what the Prime Minister, what the Finance Minister had to say? How do you think he came across to the people of Dominica?
I think he came across pretty strongly and very clearly. The presentation of the budget is the most important event in the calendar of Parliament, and people look forward to it. It has a tradition. It has a very interesting context. The House of Assembly is a very majestic building. The Minister for Finance there on the floor presenting with conviction, presenting with ease, making interesting comments on relevant matters. For example, who has education and who still needs to work a little harder at it, and so forth, and so forth. Those things made him the man. That's the man we know. That's the Roosevelt spirit, communicator par excellence with the people, and in charge of what he's doing. And it came across pretty well. The attendance was good. Also, those ordinary citizens who came to see the process. So overall, I think it came across pretty well. It's what we're accustomed to. He does a great job and did a great job today again. Good stuff.
Do you get the sense that many people, again, prior to the budget presentation, the finance minister indicated that he's been speaking far and wide to people, including children. Do you get the sense that from the content that there was wide consultation?
Yes, absolutely. Like I just referenced influence. One of the things I pay attention to is who influences whom. All right, influence, especially political influence, is something I'm interested in, and I try to always pick out who is getting what, how, and why. That's a basic question in politics. And it seems that the more and more the private sector organizes, as was just expressed by Mr. Tong, the better they can communicate and the more they get. Mm-hmm. And that is the case. Also, like Mr. Lambert mentioned earlier, the other people do get, the poor, people who have not earned a pension, for example, are also having their influence. The Prime Minister goes to them. They have different means of influence. People like the private sector are skilled at lobbying and influence. They are very modern. They're very sophisticated in their means of advocacy. And so some people, some groups, you have to reach out to them.
Sure.
But this government and this Minister for Finance, he said it and it is true, consults more widely than any other previous Minister for Finance. He says it as a joke sometimes. Members of cabinet in the past have come to the parliament to hear what's in the budget and have found out that there are interesting taxes on watermelons or other modes of travel and other things. So he always says that, and it's true. He consults widely, very widely.
You got that sense. Let me ask Eddie this question. You were talking earlier about agriculture and what role it's going to play. Based on this talk of towards expansion of the economy, which is the theme of the budget this morning, can people now breathe a sigh of relief? Are we getting the sense that there will be less and less reference towards the global financial crisis? How should people interpret that?
Well, to begin with, what has been termed the global financial crisis is beginning to ease up. Mm-hmm. And we're beginning to see slight growth predicted for the Eurozone as well as the United States. This means really that, in terms of the tourism sector, for example, that we could be seeing greater visitors from those destinations as the economic conditions and the job security returns to those economies. With respect to, we didn't mention the abattoir, for example, mm-hmm. and Robbie mentioned the whole question of poultry and pork. Right? In last year's budget, the entire program for growing the poultry and pork industries through the abattoir was laid out. A target of 1 million birds, 1 million 6-pound birds per year is the capacity of the planned abattoir. Right? As was mentioned in the budget address this morning, the The Prime Minister indicated that government has been having discussions, as a matter of fact, had discussions up to last week with a French company, very big, right, in the business of feed and poultry. They are interested in putting down a feed mill in Dominica. They have interests in Martinique and St. Lucia as well. And they are also get their young chicks. They bring in young chicks for the market in Guadeloupe, and they're interested in supplying the Dominican poultry farmers. So this area of supplying, meeting our protein requirements through pork and poultry, right? We are very confident that as soon as the contractual issues, surrounding the abattoir and the Alba coordinator, will tell you that there are certain sensitivities, since it is a government-funded project with the government of Venezuela. We do not want to get into any serious litigation or any debar with the contractors. We want to resolve these matters surrounding the contract and in a friendly manner. And it has taken some time. But we have reached a stage where we think we have ironed out the issues of concern, and we will see the abattoir completed in the course of this fiscal year. And Rob will be in a position now to make his investment in poultry. Okay?
Let's take a break. We'll continue in just a while with the post-budget discussion, talking about the 2014-2015 presentation of the national budget. We're coming back in just a while. Those of you joining us also via Kyrie FM and DBS Radio, we thank you for spending some time with us tonight as we continue to talk about the 2014-2015 national budget presented this morning in the House of Assembly. We have not had any phone calls yet. Apparently everybody gets exactly what was what was said. Nobody has any questions for any member of the panel tonight. So I will continue with the questions on my own. Let me find out from Mr. Tong. When you go back to speaking to your membership, what will be the first order of business based on what you probably heard this morning and the content?
Basically, the procedure is that the board will meet and discuss the contents of the budget, try to summarize it, also send it to the membership to get a feel from them as to how they also feel about it.
The entire membership?
Yes, because in the past, members felt that they weren't being engaged adequately. So that is also one of our strategies, is to, whilst we're advocating on behalf of the members, we also have to engage them. So whatever we're saying is actually coming from the membership and not necessarily from the board members. Because in the past, members felt that their concerns weren't being properly heard. So now we're trying to engage them more so that we can get better buy-in from our members. As soon as we get that feedback, then we will have a meeting with the government and say these are the concerns of the members, and hopefully those concerns, if some of them can be changed, they will be changed, and if not, for the next period.
You're looking to get some changes necessary?
Definitely, definitely. As I said, the item in terms of encouraging new businesses and new employees, we definitely feel that needs to be increased, because even I, as an individual business owner, I would not necessarily create or move quickly to create a new business because of the 2%. If it is a bit more, I could see myself moving forward in that direction. So I'm sure Mr. Lambert can advocate on our behalf.
But let me let me ask you this though: if you are creating a position that is necessary, look at it from the side of the glass half full. You're creating a position that is necessary within your business, and you're going to save a certain amount of money. You still don't think that's too good?
Think of it this way: not everyone thinks the way that maybe I think. Or not everyone thinks the way that a very prudent business person thinks. So not everybody sees the opportunity that is actually there. So most of us will actually create businesses without the incentive. However, if there's a great incentive there, as opposed to 5 people creating new businesses, maybe you could have 10 people creating new businesses. So that is the whole idea, to get more entrepreneurs to come in and begin to do businesses. And at the same time, hopefully, it will create more employment, more jobs, more VAT, more everything.
We have a phone call. Caller, good evening.
Good evening to the 4 panelists on that discussion there. My 4 loving people, Robbie. How are you, my son?
I'm fine now.
You hear me?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Everybody safe?
Everybody's good.
Good. I love that. Mr. Ron, I find you put a lot of weight. Oh, my goodness. And
Did you just say that?
Oh, yo, what is this for me tonight, Mr. Lambert? How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, and you?
How is the wife and family?
Excellent. Everybody's in fine health.
Okay, and Mr. Aaron, I love your dressing. Oh, my goodness, you all look fantastic.
You have a question, Mommy?
My question is, I am just happy with that budget my Prime Minister presented today. And I hope all the private investors will get together and let us all smile at that budget and have a wonderful year.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
2015. God bless all of you.
Thank you very much. 440-7657. Mommy. Let me ask you this, Eddie Lambert, about this this idea to redo the customs. It was done some time ago, upgraded, computerized, all of that.
Computer world and so on.
That's correct. Obviously, there's a need to tweak it some more. How significant do you think this is to what the government is trying to achieve?
Well, let's put it this way. Since one of the policy statements coming out of the budget is to review the fiscal incentives regime, whatever is finally arrived at will have implications for the customs procedures. The whole question of the reduction of duties on computers too.
Let me put you on hold for just a while. Let's take a phone call. Good evening. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Right, as well as the provision in the budget to facilitate small packages. Today, lots of people buy things on the internet. They shop on the internet.
Sure.
And all small packages, with a value of $150, will no longer have to go through the customs and be subject to customs procedures. Those will be handed on to the couriers, who can pass them on to the people. And that really is in a sense easing the burden on customs of having to go through all the administrative arrangements to deal with relatively small packages. And government is, foregoing approximately $430,000. It ends up to quite a sum, which tells you that today lots of people are doing business via the internet, right? And in that sense, eases up on customs.
It's something that I've heard a lot about, this issue with the customs. Your take is what?
It is another effort to make business much easier, for there to be much more ease in transactions of all kinds. And it's part of an effort, a larger effort, at shaping the environment for business that makes it easier to start and to run a business, especially successfully. And again, it's part of the pivot of the government towards the private sector. The Prime Minister is known for a form of governing, people-centered government. And it includes something that has gotten a lot of attention, social protection, support to a number of people who need it. But also, there is this arm of it, this reaching out to the private sector in new and interesting ways that promises to take Dominica's development even further. And I'm very happy to hear that those signals are being picked up. They will be emphasized by the government and by the Prime Minister, and it spells some really good going in the future for the country.
Robert, based on the business that you do, based on the people that you serve, is this particular incentive something that you think is good? Just hold that thought. Let's take a phone call. Good evening.
Hi, good night.
Yes.
Good topic. I must say I listened to the budget and it was well presented. The Prime Minister did a very good job. It have a lot in it for the people of Dominica. And what that was more interesting in the budget is the 70 years and older who receiving below the maximum of maybe less, maybe about 100 and something dollars, will receive at least $200. And I think, it says a lot about the budget. This is what they call a budget, not what that was being held at the Era Council of Culture. So I think the government is on the right footing. There's a lot for the young people, health, education, agriculture. It was just great listening to the budget today. I think the Prime Minister did a very good job, and you guys are also continue doing the great job. Still enlightening us. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Robert, you can take off where you left off.
In terms of the small packages, it's a ticklish one on the basis that the DIC not only represents large companies, you also represent small companies. So for the individuals who don't have much access or much disposable income, obviously it is it's a benefit to them, whereby you can go to the customs, and again, easy access. Time is money. If you go to the customs, it may take you an hour or so, maybe 2 hours to get all the things processed. But now, if you have that particular system in place, obviously it's going to make it a lot easier, whereby the courier can actually just bring the documents to you and the actually goods to you. But at the same time too, that too can also affect sales of individual companies. But again, how do you compete with the internet? So I think the way forward is to
Hold. Sorry about that. Let's take a phone call. Good evening.
This is Aaron and the rest of the panel.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
But once I have the question, I give A to the Prime Minister for his budget, and he expressed it with a very fatherly concern. But I'm afraid that the opposition may take him on loans. He expressed the capital expenditure to be 173.8 million. I hope I'm right. And he said the different aspects of that capital venture would be local fund grants and loans. But I didn't get, maybe I missed that point. I didn't get him saying how much, although he pays his loans regularly on a regular basis, he didn't say how much, where we are, how much we owing on loans. So I would like to hear the panel's answer concerning those he may get on not saying where we are on loans. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's keep it very brief. We don't have much time left. Does anyone want to take that? Where things are with loans as far as the national economy? This is what you did not hear.
Speaking of the national debt.
Yes, that's right.
I think it was mentioned the national debt is in the region of $860 million, I think, of which about 660 is external and the balance 200 and something domestic.
The debt to GDP ratio is down about 60 points from its peak at 130, I think, 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, 75%,
Yep.
the debt to GDP ratio.
I think what we'll do right now is basically get some final remarks from each one of you. Let me start with Dr. Aaron.
The most important thing for me in this is the outreach, the new relationship that the political leader of the Dominica Labour Party, the Prime Minister of Dominica, is seeking to have with the private sector. And what it does is it rounds up his approach, the government's approach to improving the quality of life for everybody. Those who are participating in the economy already at a high level and those who are not. All right, the private sector, as well as, for example, the caller mentioned it, those who did not qualify for pensions before, who will receive some form of support, which will eventually end up in the coffers of the business people. So I like that approach that balances social protection and growth, and it spells, good news for the future of our country.
Robert.
Advocacy is very important for us, and we look forward to continuing having that continuous dialogue. We're supposed to meet on a monthly basis. And I think once we're able to meet on a monthly basis, both sides will definitely win as a result of that. My plug for the DIC is the voice of our membership, so we also want to reach out to even those who are not members right now, and even the smaller businesses, because the smaller businesses are really the true backbone of the company, of the country, to become members of the DIC, and we will continue to advocate. Whenever there are challenges, we will speak with the governments or whatever organizations that are out there to try and get your concerns heard.
Eddie.
Kamala, I think I need to say that we continue to have a weakness in implementation. And my concern is that, and my hope is that, the implementation of the policy measures enunciated in the budget, right, will proceed in a smooth manner. There are those of us really who operate from the office of the Prime Minister. We interact regularly with some of the top public servants, like the persons like the Cabinet Secretary, the Financial Secretary, and many of the permanent secretaries and chief technical officers. And I can say that in the public service, there is a really dedicated core of people who are highly committed to the work they do. But I think all of us need really to redouble our efforts to make sure that we move speedily in implementing those policy measures, really, because as the Prime Minister indicated in the presentation of the budget address, that we expect to get the results indicated for those programs for which financing has already been secured. Mm-hmm. And if financing has been secured, really, there is no reason why all of us should not put our backs to the wheel and really redouble our efforts and meet the time frames required for the various funding instruments and other initiatives for implementing the policy measures.
And that takes us to the end of this discussion tonight. The presentation of the 2014-2015 budget in the House of Assembly this morning by the Minister for Finance, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, under the theme Towards Expansion of the Economy. Let me thank all the panelists, Dr. Philbert Aaron, Robert Tong, Eddie Lambert, and earlier in the first half of the program, economist McCarthy Marie. I am Kamala John Baptist Aaron. Thank you so much for watching and listening.